Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today I just got back from watching Avengers Age of Ultron. And wow, this film really impressed me, as do most Marvel films these days. I think when you listen to a Marvel review, you already know it's going to be positive. They just don't miss a beat, these guys. They're so excellent, everyone on board. But I think each of the directors taking on the films do tend to have a certain distinct style, and Joss Whedon's style really does flare through here. And I think his style is really nailing the emotional side of the characters as well as the humour, and by combining humour and emotion together, what you get are very human characters. And so with this very large ensemble of characters, certain among them are developed very well and you're given quite a strong emotional tie to them. In particular, I won't ruin how, but Hawkeye has this minute, I guess in around the middle of the film, that really just gives a lot of his backstory, but not in some depressing, oh I've killed, I'm a monster kind of way, but just it really grounds him as a human being, and you really feel for him. You realise that he's not a superhero, he's just some, yes, he's a highly trained agent, but he's a human, and I thought that was a really great moment in the film, and I think if you watch the film you will enjoy it too. To the overall story, what's it like? It does follow a similar template to the original Avengers. You have your epic set pieces, there's one at the end, there's one roughly in the middle, one right at the beginning that is absolutely spectacular. Each of them are amazing. If you're the kind of person who just enjoys high octane action, you will not be disappointed, and I would certainly say that the scene in the middle, I think most people know this is going to happen because of the trailers. There's a fight between Iron Man's Hulkbuster suit and the Hulk, and that really just does give the Man of Steel a run for its money in terms of wanton destruction in that scene. But as I say, as well as these high-octane moments, you've also got these very touching scenes, these relationships between the different characters that, as I say, such as Hawkeye, really give them a relatable human aspect to their characters. Because the thing about these kind of films where there's so much going on with these larger-than-life characters, these characters that can do things that we could only dream of, there's always this risk that they can become unrelatable because they're so different from us. So Joss Whedon has taken care to make sure that there are aspects of their personality that are relatable, so they do encounter certain issues that we as just average people encounter in our daily lives. And I mean, there's just, simple things like love. I mean, there's this very touching moment where the Hulk, so when he's trying to transform back into Bruce Banner, in order to calm down, Natasha Romanoff will come up to him and actually not sing him a lullaby, but it's called a lullaby, where she'll just calm him down and turn him back into his human form. And it's a very touching moment, especially when you see his big, huge, dangerous Hulk hand just slowly holding Natasha's very small, very flimsy hand, and as well as being, as I say, emotionally touching, it's also a bit tense because you don't know if the Hulk's going to flip out and injure her. She's obviously taking a huge risk. He trusts her a great deal and she trusts him a great deal. It's pretty, and it's a much bigger part of the overall story than I thought it would be. It's certainly not the driving force, but it's a nice aside. And the thing about ensemble casts like this is that you are going to have a lot of asides, a lot of parallel mini stories running up, and some of them were good, like the one I just mentioned, but others just felt like they were more set up for future films. I'd certainly say the things that Thor did in this film felt a bit like that. In fact, I can't really say that I felt Thor was... The thing about Thor is he's, I believe, the most powerful Avenger, and yet in these films, even in his own films, he impresses me the least. His character seems the least relatable. He's so powerful, he doesn't really face challenges, and in this film, what they do is, the more powerful the character is, the less time they really get in a massive action sequence. So, for example, Thor will shoot out his hammer or his lightning bolt and do massive devastation, but it's over very quickly. So when you go back to someone like Captain America, they show him for a bit longer doing something slightly less impressive. And it is a good way, admittedly, to balance out the different characters. Although one aspect in which I would say that this film is weaker than the previous Avengers is in the balancing between the different characters, things like screen time, and that is mostly to do with the fact that there are now more characters to handle, and it's almost as if it's not falling apart, it's not, but it's getting there slightly. Certain characters have to be sacrificed in terms of screen time and character development in order to make sure that some get a good sense, so people like, in this film, Hawkeye, Black Widow, the Hulk. I thought Although Iron Man's actions are integral to the plot of this film of Tony Stark, that they are very important to the progression. Without him, development would not exist. Him as a character isn't really explored that much. I'd say Captain America's a bit of a balance. I'd say he gets roughly as much as the last film. There's also two new characters, and this isn't really a spoiler because they're in it pretty much straight away. I think they're actually in the first, more or less, 2 minutes of the film. The Maximoff twins, and there are these two humans that have been experimented on by Hydra using the powers of the scepter, of Loki's scepter. So one of them, I think her name is Wanda, and Wanda has the ability to use telekinesis to get into people's minds, very much like Jean Grey from the X-Men, and Quicksilver or Pietro, he can just go really fast, that's his deal. And I felt with these two twins, as they're referred to, Scarlet Witch, or Wanda, she's got a pretty good character development. She's a bit of a crazy, unhinged character. They've got this backstory that gives them motivation to do what they're doing. And I think of the two, Wanda was given more attention, and I actually did not particularly care for Pietro at all. They gave him a few cool moments with his super speed, but they did, considering he's a new character, there wasn't enough done with him. I thought he was left a bit to the side, whereas Wanda's abilities were absolutely essential to what happens. So I would expect, going into this film, don't look forward to them too much. They're cool that they're there, and Quicksilver's abilities to run fast and move around, he does some nice stuff. He's a bit like the Hawkeye of this film, or to what Hawkeye was like in the last film, in that the personalities, it's not explored much, but he has some really cool moves in the film. And then there's, of course, Ultron, the main villain of the film, voiced by the excellent James Spader. I'm a massive James Spader fan, and he really brings his expertise in voice acting to this film. Everything he says is so interesting to listen to. It's just the way he says it. There's something about James Spader's voice, even with, of course, the alterations to make him sound more robotic, that is just so enthralling. It really does capture your imagination. So not only is the writing good, but the delivery is superb. It's just way above average for James Spader. Something that really surprised me about Ultron was how human they made him. So, although he is a robot, he has a very human mindset. Of course, a psychopathic one. He is the bad guy. He has a deranged motivation that's crazy, but he does have human flaws in the sense that he'll make a few jokes. He's a bit like Loki, really. He is the bad guy, but he does have a few good lines. I think some people will disagree with me on this, but I preferred Ultron to Loki. Mostly, well, there's two reasons. I prefer James Spader to Tom Hiddleston in terms of vocal delivery, and that's just a big deal to me personally. But also, when he's in his robotic form, he's far more physically imposing, making him out to be just a more scary villain, really, a more intimidating villain. It's not like I don't want to give away too much about his capabilities, but he's certainly a worthy villain, and if there's any complaints from me about his character, it's that he wasn't there as much as I would like him to have been. I wish there were more scenes of him talking. There's actually one quite early on, I wouldn't call this a spoiler, but I'm kind of hesitant to share it, but I think it's in the trailer, but I'll say it anyway. There's a bit where he jokes about, I was just about to explain to you my evil plan, and then shoots him and blows him off. But the thing is, I wish he had actually explained his evil plan just to hear him talk more, because he's got such a great voice. It's so interesting to listen to. But Ultron, he's a deranged robot. His motivations, even if we couldn't understand them as humans, there's the fact that he's a robot is the explanation in and of itself. He's a great villain, and I don't think this will be mass consensual, because Tom Hiddleston did a great Loki, but I think I prefer Ultron to Loki. That's just me, though. Both characters had grunts to get destroyed upon waves, so it was the Jitari in the original Avengers to get just basically wiped off by the Avengers, and in this one it's they were originally the Iron Legion, but Ultron is able to control them, so he's essentially every single Iron Legion, Iron Man, and of course his main body as well. And it just allows for these loads of scenes where the Avengers are just wiping them out, just destroy. Absolutely no threat from these grunts, but the moment, of course, someone like Ultron comes in, there is a danger. And also there's the fact that every now and then a civilian will get in trouble, and one of the Avengers will have to go off and save them. And I think it goes without saying, I mean, I've got the trailers up so you'll see it for yourself, but the special effects are of course amazing. I think it's been a long time though since we've really seen a massive improvement in special effects, simply because they've been so good for so long. But if I was to point out one thing about them it really struck my attention, it would be Ultron's facial design. So despite being a robot, he does convey a decent amount of emotion, for like a psychopathic robot. There's a decent amount of emotion by those standards. And so overall, as I say, really enjoyed the film. I think it did a great job of combining emotion, humour, and the catastrophic events that the Avengers have to respond to. If there was, I think, one thing maybe some people will dislike, it would be the pacing, because the introductory scene is so spectacular, it's so enthralling, so high octane, that the fact that it takes a bit of a breather to explain and set up the whole situation of the movie, it does feel a bit jilting, because you've just had this really high adrenaline moment and now you're back to a slightly calmer moment. Some people will say to that, well, it's nice to take a bit of a breather. Other people will say, I don't want the action to stop. That was amazing. I want more. I want more. And don't worry, more will come, but you'll have to wait. So thank you very much for watching my review. I don't normally review movies, so I apologise if this was a bit vague, a bit amateur, but hey, I enjoyed doing it and I very much enjoyed watching the film. As always, people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.